Hi, welcome to Tuesday's lesson on civil rights leaders. Let's start with a bell ringer. Please take a look at this picture and determine the following question. What term describes this type of protest? For background information, this picture is showing a sit-in lunch counter protest in Greensboro, North Carolina. These protests, completed by these specific students, are going to convince the Woolworth department store chain to end its official policy of racial segregation. Once again, what term describes this kind of protest? This is a term that we have used in class before. Just a reminder. This lesson has a couple of activities. We've just completed our bell ringer. We are going to examine some famous quotes. We are going to talk about the differences between offense and defense, or the sword and the shield in the civil rights movement. We're going to spend some time learning the similarities and differences between Malcolm X versus Martin Luther King Jr., and cover a short video about Election Day history. Please make sure that you submit this assignment via Schoology by Tuesday at midnight. Our learning target for the day is that I can determine the similarities and differences between civil rights leaders Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. To start, let's take a look at the following quotes. Please indicate which quote you relate to the most. You can do this by putting a circle or shape over the quote of your choice, or by dragging the icon if you are using Pear Deck. The two quotes read as follows. Concerning nonviolence, it is criminal to teach a man not to defend himself when he is the constant victim of brutal attacks. We are nonviolent with people who are nonviolent with us. The second quote reads, social change comes most meaningfully through nonviolent action. We adopt the means of nonviolence because our end is a community at peace with itself. Please take a moment to examine these and select which one you relate to most. Pause and continue to the next slide. Please record the reasoning behind your decision here. Why did you choose that quote? Type it in this text box here. The creators of these texts are listed at the bottom of the slides. Our first quote comes from civil rights leader Malcolm X. Our second quote comes from civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr. Malcolm X and Dr. King are two very critical leaders in the civil rights movement. However, these two have some critical differences in their philosophies or their beliefs about action during the civil rights movement. Sometimes these two individuals are referred to as the sword and the shield, right? I like to think of that as a reference to an offensive game or a defensive game. Which are you going to play? Malcolm X's philosophy was more centered on action and by any means necessary, which is a quote that refers to his belief that violence in the right context is necessary to achieve social change. Martin Luther, on the other hand, is famous for his belief in nonviolence. Civil disobedience is the hallmark of his preachings, and Martin Luther King Jr. is much more focused on using nonviolence as a means to show societal and community love, or action focused on improving the lives of everyone equally. Again, I like to use the metaphor of the sword and the shield. Malcolm X is more concerned with immediate action, while Martin Luther King Jr.'s philosophy is more defensive and based on the defense of the community. That said, you don't have to take it from me. We would like you guys to see for yourselves. Play the video on this slide and pay attention to the words and actions of each of the individuals. Please notice, what are some of the differences between the beliefs of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr.? Once you're done, type your answer here and play the video. Welcome back. Our next activity is a Venn diagram. We would like you to copy and paste these individual pieces of information into this slide here. Please use this side for answers related to Martin Luther King Jr., this side for answers that relate to Malcolm X, and the middle for answers that concern both of these individuals. Pause and return when you're done. I think it's interesting to think about these two very different attitudes as two sides of the same coin. Martin Luther and Malcolm X have opposing viewpoints, But at the same time, these different attitudes are going to propel each other, meaning Martin Luther King Jr.'s case is made stronger by the presence of Malcolm X, and vice versa. Malcolm X's beliefs are made stronger by the presence of Martin Luther King Jr. Although these attitudes are very different, these attitudes held by civil rights leaders are going to reflect a larger dialogue in American history, meaning most of us have the same long term goals, but often disagree about how to accomplish them. Most Americans deep down want the same things: increased freedom, more opportunities, a better life. But the path to get those things is where we are often in disagreement. Um, in particular, there's tension or disagreement between two mindsets, which is the by any means necessary or the end justifies the means mindset, or the slow and steady mindset, which is a belief in long term change that's less chaotic. The differences in these beliefs and the tension between these mindsets are visible between the leaders of just about every period in American history, including the founding fathers during the American Revolution, military leaders during the Civil War and World War II, and even within individual political parties. Within one party, you may see politicians that disagree on how to accomplish the change that they're seeking, by any means necessary or the slow and steady approach. This is going to reflect dialogue that we're going to hear throughout our lessons in eighth grade American history, including election cycles. Speaking of, it's an election day. Why today specifically? Please pause, watch this video, and learn a little bit more about why election days are the first Tuesday of the month of November. Welcome back. Last things to accomplish in this lesson. Please check your Venn diagram is accurate with this answer key here. You can turn this around and swivel it in your assignment to ensure that you have the correct information. Thanks so much.